typical 5 principles of conservation agriculture. I'm never very keen on regenerative agriculture because we're by no means anywhere near down that route at present, but we've got the foresight to think that that's where we want to be. But we've reduced soil disturbance. We bought either self subsoiler, which we use it interim on land that we feel as though a bit less of a bit more of a compaction problem, or kind of like try and just condition the soil, give the cover crop something to get going, but with a minimal disturbance. I don't ever want to break between the leg, because breaking up that bacteria and fungi interaction, you're creating oxidization. You're starting to break up what you've tried to develop over the years. And sugar beet and potatoes in the rotation, big question mark for the future. But at the moment, the way that we are working on that kind of land, the soil in the potatoes taking a lot less working. The basis will be that we have to maintain a gross margin, we have to retain a profit. So at the moment, potatoes is going to stick for at least the next 2 or 3 years. But the recovery time of the system that we've got makes that soil recover a lot faster. It keeps water infiltration there during the season as well. And the approach that we've taken with the water management has improved that harvest time, and harvest conditions have improved massively. And it's more, from what I remember back in 2006, knee-high in mud in the middle of October, end of November, pulling trailers around, things like that. I think those times have gone with the way that we work land and integrating the cover cropping system on it. And even between those seasons, with the low disturbance subsoiler and things like that, trying to build up the bacteria and fungi aspect. And within that system, keeping the soil surface covered, we aim to have something growing for as long as possible throughout the whole year. As soon as the combine's out, we're straight in there with a drill and getting going, and it seems to help suppress weeds, and also it armors the ground and makes it a lot more resilient to different weather types. Managing the covers with different species, it's ongoing. We're trying it every year differently. Last year we grew a lot of tillage radish in 2 or 3 of the maize fields that we had, with 3 or 4 of the species on top of that, and they seem to yield the best out of the lot. And that was on quite heavy land that we probably predominantly wouldn't grow potatoes on, or sugar beet on, but it was a great performer, and great to look back and think, well, we actually achieved that right. And I mean, we do things like foliar testing, sap testing. It's that measure and management that's a big movement going forward. And understanding soil and building bacteria and fungi. I'm by no means anywhere where Jake Freestone is, or Tim Parton, but I try and read as much as possible, and I think I try and work with principles rather than too much science. I was never much of an academic, so working with principles is what I find better. And understanding that bacteria and fungi interaction with the soils, and it comes back to the cover species and the difficulties that you can get with what's classed as the green bridge, and how you manage the different species. And we do try and pick quite frost sensitive species, so they start naturally senescing back. And then we can go through with the glyphosate spray. We are trying at the moment topping some covers, which I'll come to a bit lower down with the livestock integration. And then it comes back to the rotation as well. Trying not to be yield driven and gross margin driven is quite important, because we want to create a system that lasts out generations. That's what we try and do. We're trying to generate a rotation that we can not necessarily stick to, but it's flexible. Every crop has a place in that rotation, and it all makes a profit, really. And that's the long-term approach that we're taking. One of the principles is the livestock integration. We do have sheep, as I mentioned before, coming on, and we are looking at topping to imitate grazing a little bit on some of the covers, and to try and regenerate that. So we're managing it ourselves. It comes at a cost, but we're at the very early stages where we tried this year and last year of topping probably about 20-30% off the top of the covers to stop them from flowering. When they flower, from what I gather, the carbon nitrogen ratio changes in the plant, and becomes different. So you want to try and keep the carbon nitrogen ratio down to around about 12. So what rots down is able to be utilised by the soil, and you don't take something out of the soil to break the cover crop down that then implicates the preceding crop that goes in that field. So yeah, we're trying to imitate that and be a bit more controlled. But they do say that if you do top and let it regrow, you do get around about another 60% more carbon sequence in that soil, which I think when you look at where we want to be, especially on the heavy land, we want to be trying to build up the organic matter and soil bioreturn. And then the next thing is the principal approach. What we've done, someone said to me years ago, collaboration is innovation. So I think with the joint venture that we've done and capitalise on the grants, I would class what we do with Severn Trent joint venture, what we're trying to achieve with them, and I approach it in the mindset that we are going to do it properly. We're not trying to do it just to get the grant money in and relieve the overdraft. I want to see results out the back of it, and having the right people on the bus. As mentioned before, we were doing some contracting. That relationship broke down, and another one came from John down the road, and that helped us keep our capital working. We give him a tractor, he pays for that, it keeps his costs down, and it keeps our machinery being utilised. And with the potato job, it just makes it a bit more cost effective to keep the kit that we've got. I think with the joint venture as well, it's helped manage risk. We've spread our capital investment over a bigger area. Managing risk isn't just on a financial level, it's probably on an intellectual level, where you can talk to people about different approaches, and they can see things from a very different perspective to what you can. I've learned a lot off it. And just a bit of a few observations. This is land after maize. And type of thing that we're trying to do is, rather than putting a seed dressing on the majority of it, we put a seed drench down the drill, and you can see the products on the left and what they've got in them on the right, and things like this. The consortium at the bottom, the bacteria, which has got a number of strains in, we are using that a little bit as a foliar application as well. To try and just hold back a few diseases and things like that. With rust, see on the second picture along, that's a maize root that's still in the ground. We did literally just went straight in with a drill after the maize had been foraged, and you can see the wheat itself. You can see how much soil's hanging on to that. That's root interaction and things like that with the soil, and that will hopefully just build up, and you can see the length of that, and that was drilled on the 22nd of October. So it's been a good back end, but you can see on the right hand side picture, it's just the root structure going down. The fact that we direct drilled it after maize, it hasn't shown any real problems whatsoever. This is land that gets flooded, and the less we've worked it, the more the water infiltration has worked. Next door neighbour cultivates it, and you can see when we get flooded, our land seems to drop a lot faster with puddles than what his does. He can be still working his in March, trying to get rid of water while we're back direct drilling in ours. Yeah, and this is a heavy land species that we put on some heavy land, where I refer to as brickyard. So 40% clay, but this is kind of like the 5th, 6th year that we've been doing it. It has improved a lot. The soil structure you can see, but the bottom right picture you can see it's not infallible. There is a bit of a compaction there, which we need to address, but I think you can see the worms still going through it, the roots are still going down. So it's one of those things where I think probably look at different species next year, and maybe run through with low disturbance subsoil on top of that, but you can see what's in the species on it. And we do find that some species, some years, depending on what the weather conditions, don't seem to be as persistent as others. One thing I have learned with the clover is I'm going to try and keep them off where we do potatoes, because clovers seem to be, from what I was reading the other day, seem to be a bit of an issue with aggravating the PCN problems that we might occur in the future. But yeah, this is on heavy land, and you can see slight compaction. We have started to use gypsum on it, and we have started to use loads of subsoils on the heavier land as well. But it's a case of getting the spade out. I seem to go around every week with a spade and digging and see where we are, and see where that kind of water water infiltration is as well. It's great to see that it is still quite dry underneath, but the water, it's not. We had 20 mil at the weekend, and this was I dug this on Sunday afternoon, and yeah, there's no standing water on what would be if we'd worked it. Yeah, I'm quite excited about it this year. This is the best we've seen the covers up there for quite a few years now. Yeah, top left, Tilly's Radish. Radish. That was on heavyish land that we won't grow potatoes or sugar beet on, and you can see the penetration. That I do worry that sometimes if I put that on very heavy land like that and a high percentage species, you do end up with sideways compaction. So you end up creating more issues than less. So it's that understanding different species and how they work and what you want them to do. You can see just underneath that we've moved a bit more towards the All Radish in a King's cover mix. It seems to come, and probably a bit less bulgier, but it's still got the long tap root on. And it's always amazing how you think land that you don't work and the water infiltration, it's just so much better than land that you do work, and you end up coming to in spring, and you're wondering what to cultivate it with, because you've got to skate across the top without sinking in and getting it to dry out. It's just, for us now, we just go, right, let's go straight in, and that's it. So this is going to go maize. Looking at one or two bits of the covers, I think I'll probably end up direct drilling the maize in it without doing anything to it whatsoever. Hopefully, middle ones just come like on the lighter land. That's up to our waist. It's quite nice to see that the cover is doing the job. I wouldn't want to put a cereal crop in with the volunteer barley because of that green bridge and the aphids issue. So we because it was beans, the volunteer barley stayed, and it acted as a bit of a cover. But you can see that it was only drilled a couple of weeks ago, and it's started to chip now in the conditions that it's there. And yeah, this is again heavy land that we are improving, and I've never seen. Even in the middle of autumn drilling, I've never seen that land go like it has really. We always used to work it down, get back to it, and end up trying to skate over the top of it because it was too wet underneath. I believe that our cover crops now on heavy land are establishing a lot better than what they were 2-3 years ago. So sticking a cover crop in on that heavy carpet marl land, it's about 2 foot high now, while probably about 3 years ago we were doing exactly the same, slightly different species, but it was only about 3-4 inches high. So, and I put that down to soil management with the cultivations that we're doing, as well as putting gypsum on and putting nutrition in there, as well as I think the general soil biota is starting to increase and creating a bit of a flywheel effect that we've given it the opportunity to grow. We've got up to about 30 hectares worth of trickle irrigation kit. We've got it on a leader grant. The whole grant was 56,000, so we've got 40% worth of that, which came to about 23,000. We use 1/3 of the amount of fuel and power requirements, and 2/3 of the amount of water that we'd use with a rain gun. I work out our cost on that is about £76 without the grant being included in. It's about £76 a hectare to run the trickle, to get it laid and everything like that, and opposed to an overhead irrigation gun, it's around £86 a hectare. So I'm depending on field size, where they are, and it's a very much front loaded system. So you are putting 2 or 3 days worth of work in to get it in early season, but then you can leave it, just go and turn a pump on. It makes things a lot easier on a Saturday and Sunday. It has made our irrigation a bit more available for doing other jobs. You can see on the bottom right, that was just an example, just a couple of gorings where I didn't bother putting tape in for 5 or 6 meters worth of tape. So, but you can see the difference it makes over the season. And that's the weather stations that we put in with the soil moisture monitoring, and the one on the left is a trickle run one, and the one on the right is overhead irrigation. You can see with the both of them how consistent the left hand side one is opposed to the right hand side. You can see we started irrigating before, just as they pop through, or even before, just to get it wet up, and it's quite good to run the system. And you can see top left, that's how we put the tape in, and it takes a lot of management. It's exciting to see, but we are seeing a consistent yield of about 4.5-5 tonne a hectare off the back of that, it effect pays for it all to go down, and it just works out a lot better gross margin wise. Really, we are looking at putting nutrition down there as well coming years. I just wanted to get our approach for the whole system set up and working right, and our discipline towards the approach to get that right before we start putting nutrition down. But I think most of that will maybe not be direct nutrition, but more things like orange oil and molasses and things like that, and humic and fulvic acid, just to help build up that soil interaction with the plant. So yeah, no, I'm quite positive about that. It's quite nice on a Saturday morning going, turning a pump on and buggering off home, where spending time with the family rather than running around with pipes breaking and things like that. So it has got its benefits.